This week, President Joe Biden had a victory with the passing of a $1 trillion infrastructure package. It seems to be something that all sides of politics can agree on. The question here, though, is whether infrastructure is the panacea for economic woes, think jobs and lasting productivity improvements, or whether this is simply catch-up for too many years and too many governments sweating their assets beyond their use-by date. Joining me now, Sky News Washington correspondent and the Australian newspaper's economics editor, Adam Creighton. Adam, many thanks for your time. As always, this is a pretty big political victory for Joe Biden, wasn't it?
Yeah, look, it certainly is, but we shouldn't get too carried away yet because it's only just passed the Senate, and the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, she has said that she's only going to let it go through the lower house if the much, much larger $3.5 trillion bill, which is very controversial, is passed first. So certainly everyone's getting very excited about the bipartisan bill, but it's not the law yet. Look, it's probably going to be the law, but, I just think that we should wait and see.
OK, so then go to the benefits or the merits of infrastructure versus, say, for example, simply handing out cash and putting that into people's pockets as a way of trying to stimulate your economy and getting some lasting effect for the money and the debt that governments are going into around the world.
Well, look, I think the US government has been doing plenty of handing out cash to families now. It's been doing that for 1.5 years and probably, frankly, more than any other government in the world. There were the Trump stimulus packages and there were the Biden stimulus packages. So I think most economists would say that actual hard physical infrastructure is what the US needs, not more cash handouts. And that's what this first bill, the smaller bill, the $1 trillion bill that you just mentioned, that's what it aspires to do, to improve the nation's bridges and roads and public transport facilities. Certainly, though, we should put it in context. The $1 trillion is over 10 years, so it's not quite as large as it sounds, and indeed about $500 billion of it was already due to be spent. So in fairness, it's an extra $500 billion over a decade, which in the context of the US budget is actually not that huge.
So I take it all the way back to 2014 and the G20 summit in Brisbane, because the final communique, and it was led by Australia, this push for infrastructure to have some sort of global database on infrastructure projects. It almost actually came all the way back to Mike Baird, the former New South Wales Premier, when he sold off and recycled the assets for a desalination plant that nobody wanted and it was never going to be used effectively. So it's really interesting to see that some of the seeds of what might be happening in the US go all the way back to that G20 summit in Brisbane.
Yeah, look, that's right. I think the word infrastructure has become a buzzword, and politicians all around the world love to use the word because it's popular. I mean, who could disagree? And certainly in the case of this bill in the US, you've got both Republicans and the Democrats, of course, both agreeing with this particular bill. And so that's why it's going ahead. But look, it's a long shot to say it's actually going to succeed. The money, of course, is there, but there's only a certain amount of tradesmen in the US, of construction companies that can do all these things. And of course, if you try to do them all at once, then you just end up with inflation. And indeed, that's already started even before the money has started to be spent. We've got 5.4% inflation now in the US. That's over the 12-month period to July, which is the highest in 13 years. And as I just said, these infrastructure projects haven't even started yet.